Welcome friends, it's Rae. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's video is a part of the Card Crafters collaborative video hop, and our theme for this quarter is Holiday Magic. So in this video I want to show you how to make a detailed card scene with minimal coloring and easy to mass produce for Christmas. I'm using the beautiful 6x8 stamp set by Gina Designs. This is Beautiful Forest, and it has a beautiful background stamp and some really detailed drawings of animals, so I really like that. And you can download this free design tip sheet that has the four different seasons, so that will help you out with your coloring. I'm also using the Sentimental Holiday Sentiments set. Really like the fact that it has both inside and outside sentiments. Let's get started with our card. I have placed a piece of 65-pound Nina white cardstock in my MISTI and my background stamp, and I'm inking it up with Hero Arts Intensified black ink, and I'm going to ink this and stamp 4 times, and I'm using my dry eraser to try to apply even pressure and get a really good stamp impression. So I'm done inking. I will then use my heat tool to heat set this for the minimal amount of ink I'm going to apply, but I want to make sure that this is nice and dry. I'm using a cool gray alcohol ink marker, and am adding touches of that gray around my sky just to tone that down a little bit. Next, I'll bring in some pale green marker and just add touches of green peeking out from my snowy background. And I'm adding that green just underneath the black, some of the black areas. Next, I'll bring in my alcohol marker, my colorless blender, and blend out the green. I just want hints of green, so I want to tone it down just a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here. Let me know in the comments whether you make holiday cards, and if so, have you started on yours? Are you halfway done? Partially? What is the status? I am not nearly done. Next, I'm bringing in some Distress ink in Stormy Sky, and it's really just what's left on my brush. I didn't add any new ink, and I want to leave quite a bit of white space or white sky. So here I am bringing in some Picket Fence Distress ink, placing it on my palette with a couple of drops of water, and then I am splattering this on my background scene, and have this in my splatter box to try and contain that splatter so that it doesn't get everywhere. And I am being very liberal with my splatter. And this makes for a very snowy scene. And I bring in my heat tool to dry this before I move on to the next step. If you were mass producing these cards, you could just set this aside. Do all of your backgrounds in one swoop, and then do all of the minimal inking and set these aside to dry. I placed my panel back into my Misty because I had a thought. I wanted a North Star in my sky, and I pulled this from an old Hero Arts kit, and it's just about the right size. I'm prepping with my anti-static powder tool for heat embossing, bringing in my Versamark ink, and we'll ink this up and stamp my star in gold. I'm using superfine gold embossing powder by Wow, and using my dry paintbrush here to just remove some unwanted embossing powder. And then I will heat set this with my heat tool. I'm trimming my panel down to just under 3 3/4 by 5. I just want to trim that white border off the left and right sides and the top of my panel, and then trim that down to 5. I couldn't decide which of these beautiful animals I wanted to use, so I stamped a couple. In the end, I decide to use the deer. I have heat embossed it with clear embossing powder, and then I am bringing in my number 41 Hazelnut alcohol ink marker and just coloring him in. This is real quick and simple coloring. The images in the stamp set are so detailed, you don't really need to do much in the way of trying to color in shading and shadows and all of that fun stuff. I'm coming in here with my number 145 Buttercup Yellow to add some highlights, or at least the few highlights that I'm going to add. Again, it's so detailed. It's easy to follow where the stamp details are and use that as your highlights and shadows. Here I'm working on my sentiment, and I placed a scrap of Hero Arts cranberry cardstock in my Misty, and placing my grid sheet in so that I can line up my sentiment. I'm prepping my cardstock for heat embossing using my anti-static powder tool. I am stamping this a couple of times with my Versamark clear embossing ink, and then using the same Wow gold embossing powder and heat setting this with my heat gun. I'm using liquid glue to affix my focal panel to my craft card mat. I placed my acrylic block on top, and then am going to use double-sided tape on the back of my craft mat to affix this to my cranberry red card mat. And so I've partially released the release paper. We'll affix this where I want it, get it all lined up, and then remove the remaining release paper. Next, I have cut my sentiment down to 3/4 of an inch, and am using my deer image to figure out exactly where I want to place my sentiment. So I decide I want to trim my sentiment down on the left side. So I'm placing that in my trimmer and just going to cut off a piece here. I'm also going to trim down the right side and then make a fishtail by starting in the middle and snipping through the center and once on each side. I'm going to place some liquid adhesive on the back of my sentiment strip and then go ahead and affix that to my card front. I hope you see how easy it would be to mass produce these cards. There's just very little inking, and then I am tying in my red mat or using my sentiment strip to tie in the color of the red mat, and that gold, the gold that's in the North Star, as well as the brownish gold color of my deer. And that all adds to the completeness of this card. I have popped my deer up on foam tape and will affix that just above my sentiment strip. And I was thinking of adding more to this card, you know, in terms of maybe some glitter dots, but in the end decided against it. I think it has everything it needs at this point, just to keep it simple yet elegant. I will link to the next person on the hop, so be sure to check them out and let them know you came from my YouTube video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the video and will give me a thumbs up, subscribe if not already a subscriber, and check out all of the other crafty crafters in this collaboration. Good day, friends.